Hey, good morning, everyone. So, welcome to the new chapter of our subject ethics. I believe we have gone for far away from our discussion, no? Since the previous discussion that we discussed the nature of man according to the perspective of the Western and Oriental thinkers. Now, we are going to move with another topic, no, which is the human acts and the acts of man. And part of that is that we will be discussing also, no, its subtopics, which actually entails the following constituents of human acts, knowledge, freedom, voluntariness, and also the universal values. Now, I believe, class, no, I'm so sorry. I supposed to provide something, no, which is a PowerPoint for the class for this discussion. But unfortunately, the video that I have, the presentation, I'm sorry, not the video, but the PowerPoint presentation that I have was actually corrupted. So I'm trying to reach those person who is actually assigned for the with the topic, but wala na no because we have a collaborative what is this? Nami collaborative nga pagkuhan ko class, pag-assign sa mga topics, and then we will be providing making the PowerPoint sa among during our FX training. But right now, I failed to, what is this? I failed to reach the person. So, lain sig paabot pa kong dugay, no? So, I have to move. Anyway, this article that I have here, where I actually bring everybody, to the topic, is something also reliable because uh, uh, this is the same as the PowerPoint that we have from our collaborative nga pag-provide sa topics. Now, I will be sharing to you my screen about sa tuwa nga next topic, no? So akong share sa inyo akos, no? Okay, so our topic is all about human acts and acts of man. So of course, no, in studying ethics, it is necessary to consider its material object and its formal object. So those are the causes of the existence of everything. And I even forgot to include that one, no, during the discussion that we have from the introduction of the philosophy, which is appeal po na siya kaning mga causes, kasi the formal cause, the material cause. So with such understanding, which is what we call material cause, material object, no, it actually seeks to study in ethics for the material object, ningon siya, no, seek to study the nature of a human act. While for its formal object, we seek to study the goodness or badness of an act. But first, of course, let us examine the nature of an human act through its definition. So di ano, ato asang uting kayon kung sa definition. So what is a human act? Di na ato makita are actions that are proper to humans. So it's not proper for the animals, it's not actually proper intended for anything else, no other than human being. So since we have this gift of intellect, and free will, we have this gift of free will endowed by the creator. So of course consider na siya, no, that the sa laktod istorya was, no, this is how human beings are actually ought to behave. And part of its way in behaving or performing the act, of course we have to understand, since there is this what we call free will na atong kagawasan kung sa Binisaya pa, there is that the mix of the factor, which is this what we call the intellect. Of course everybody, the actions of each person has its corresponding responsibility and accountability. So that is actually cited by a living Christian moral life 2013. So why human acts? Nganong mubuhat man ang tao? Human acts reveal the value of responsibility or accountability. So sakto man po, no, that if we are going to integrate that one with our previous discussion, of course we do not just exist for nothing, but we exist for a cause. Meaning to say, kanina nga to ang pagbuhat, pagpanikay-sikay. Okay, kanina we talk about human acts man. Kanina itong pagbuhat o panikay-sikay sa matag adlaw, of course, part na siya sa tuang responsibilidad isip usa ka tawo nga nahimugso aning kalibutan na. And with that, of course, we also have an accountability. Ganino, if you are going to put basis on the Bible, pag mugna sa Dios na to, wala man tag ingon no, gimugna lang ta nga mura lang tag wala ra, no? We have the purpose, and having that purpose, of course, napute pa, corresponding pananagutan. Now, both men and women actually takes that responsibility and put that one into actions. So these are the two categories of the topic that we have. We had the human acts and the acts of men. And based on what you can see to my presentation, na di ano gipakita di ano ang kaning kalahian, no, ilang kalainan. So atong tukion no unsay kalainan sa duha. So let's read first with the human acts. So what is human acts? Acts that we do with the use of free will and intellect. No, gigamit nato ang atuang gitawag og sa atong pagbuhat og usa ka butang o sa atong pag-actualize. Like for example, kaning kuano kaning pagbasa, kaning pagtuon ana no. Natay kagawasan. Yun, nya na po tay gitawag og intellect. So paggamit sa atong intellect, of course, we also have kagawasan. Like for example, right now, if I were to cite an example, normal lang jud no nga ang mga tao during election natay lain-lain nga pilianan no na may lain-lain tag pambato no lain-lain tag manok sa atong pagka-presidente. Now, there are people who are actively campaigning sa ilahang presidente nga gani no ato makita da sa Facebook no manag-awayay na da managlalisay. But anyways, I'm just citing that one as an example, but everybody has its free will. Now we have the intellect niya. Kaning duha nagkuyog ni ang atong kagawasan o kaning atuang paminsar no, nga atuang pagbansay-bansay o paghuna-huna sa mga butang. Kay mingon tag intellect, of course, this is the highest form of thinking. Now, kaning intellect, since we use our intellect usahay no mingon taw nganong di ta ganahan ni Marcos, nganong di ta ganahan ni Pacquiao, nganong di ta ganahan ni Lini. So katong mga mamutaray nasa ilang isig kaiya nga manok because they also have knowledge no, ang uban ay mga nasagap nga mga information, ang uban coming from the people lang nga na-influence lang sila. But anyways, by the end of the day, each and every one of us has its free will no. Mo na nga wa jud tay katungod no nga mo deprive, wa jud tay katungod pud sa uban nga magbuot pa sa ilahang kinsa ilang butaran, because that is one way of exercising their free will. And that actually belongs to this what we call human acts. Now, they are done freely, no, deliberately and voluntarily. So of course, gitawag siya they are done freely. Dili siya pasabot no nga wala ta na inform. But we are totally informed pero gibuhat na siya no. Kay tangod kaning mingon tag kagawasan kas, of course, no one actually dictates you to do that one. Deliberately and voluntarily. Okay? So you in yourself, from the word itself, voluntary, meaning to say you in yourself, you fully submit that one. You fully commit yourself to do that particular act. Now, these actions are that are proper to humans, thus the crucial element of willful consent and knowledge of the action must be present. So di ano, gitawag siya no, nga nagit siya gitawag siya crucial element because there is that willful consent. Meaning gitag willful consent, of course, you have asked yourself na gyud no nga nangutana kasi ko galingon nga this is something that I want. Mo gani no usahay no nga mingon ta nga time pa sabi ay sa ko samo kay di ko katarong og desisyon. So with that, you know yourself and you know the fact that you are fully aware no. Nya imong pagtimbang-timbang ana nya nganong hitabo man sir nga kana nga ang uban sir wala kabalo niya kita depende man na no ang level of intellect sa usa ka tawo magdepende po na on how you actually perseveres to acquire knowledge, to acquire information. So magdepende po na ang degree sa atong, though you know the fact you are very willful no imong gibuhat nimo voluntarily, but that doesn't mean nga pareha tag outcomes tanan because of this what we call the presence of knowledge also. Di ta magkaparehas og level of understanding. Okay? As cited also, living a Christian moral life, no, 2013. So the following examples are studying, working, eating healthy foods. So gitagaan gyud yung mga positive nga mga buhat no, meaning to say kaning studying, of course, with the use of intellect, we know the fact that when we study, of course, we can gain something, we can gain knowledge. And in the presence of free will, naman po tayo kagawasan no, on how we are going to perform with this kind of action, kaning pag-study, no? Ang uban di sila study ron kay para nila preoccupied pa kay lang mind, no? Nay uban mag-study gina sila every day because they believe nga every day is kanang very kuan kayo, no? Kana bang importante kayo na time is very precious. Working, there are lots of people who are working, and there are people also who are just preferring their lives to actually settle down, sleeping, eating too much, nabalik na sa no laag, and kanino eating healthy foods. So makita ginatanong na practice ning duha ka component ang free will ug ang intellect. Now what about the acts of man? Someday ni siya, sir. So acts of man, acts that we do without free will and intellect. Some are done by instinct. So it is something no nga wala siya gihatag sa tuwa kagawasa, no, and wala sa tuwa gihatag ang intellect. Now like for example kaning kaning pagbutar, kaning pagbutar sa usa ka tawo nga like for example there is that someone nga nag-ingon ninyo nga butarin na o di na mo butaran usilon ti ka. So of course obviously mo full gid siya sa gitawag nito wala tay free will, no. And coming from the consent of this, ganing gitawag na to willful consent coming from our intellect, wala man na, no? Gikan sa imong utok, dili man na, actually, dili man na may preferred kuan nimo no tao, pero because of that threat that becomes the instrument nga para ikaw mahadlok, you perform the act, no? Nya matawag po na siya, if human acts is voluntary, an acts of man becomes involuntary. Okay? And some are done by instinct. Tinuod, no? Kaning like for example, kaning sexual drive. No, that is instinctual. Kaning kagutom, that is also instinctual. Di ba? Oh, kaning maniguro ka, like for example, pareha tong ni kalit like abot ang bagyo nga magdakag daghang kang container og tubig, maglinya jud dito imong punog daghanong ginimo puno ang imong sudlanan because you know the fact nga uhawon mo the next day. So that is also something instinctual, no? So the actions are performed without conscientious deliberation of knowledge and with the absence of a free will. No acts of man constitute unconscious and involuntary actions. One of the examples here are breathing, digestion, circulation of air in the body. So of course, we do not know everything about them. Wa man ta mingon nga sige na, kuha na diha no kana nga pwede na kagalingon sa kuntiyan. Wala po no. Kaning breathing na to, gani no. Can you imagine? Can you actually hold your breath? Of course, dili no. That becomes that actually performs involuntarily. Wala ta na fully wala tay kuana na ba? Wala tay control ba? No? Sa to ang breath because it actually performs all by itself, no? Coming na siya sa pag-design sa ato ang creator sa tuwa. So these are the natural processes within the body that continue to function without the use of free will and reason. Meaning to say, they just happen naturally as automatic responses. As an automatic responses to situations. Okay, human acts versus acts of man. So there are also essential qualities of the human acts. We have the knowledge of the act. It must be deliberate. So of course, when you deliberate something, no, that makes everyone becomes informed. Freedom, it must be free. So of course, naagyo ng freedom, no, wala yung nagpugos. Voluntariness is must be voluntary. Okay? Wala ginapugos na walay halo nga pamugos, walay something nga nakapa-trigger sa ka person to do such act. Okay? Parehaan ning sama aning ko ano, parehaan ng suguon ka kanang mukaon ka, no? Actually gisugo mo tana kanang mukaon ta nana na siya mo fall sa acts of man. Kay ngano, it is because of our hunger nga kita kanang atong tiyan mukalam na atong tiyan mo na mukaon ta. So dili na siya voluntary, no? Involuntary na siya because of the presence of sa tuang pagdiktar sa tuang tiyan nagigutom na siya. Or else kaning physical na to nga panginahanglan nga like for example moinom gyud ta kay uhawon man ta. So the moment nga muuhaw na ta, that's the time nga moinom ta. Okay? Essential qualities of acts of man done without knowledge. So that is actually done without knowledge, without consent, and involuntary. Okay? So that's I think that is something no that is very easy to discern. Constituents of human acts. So we have here human acts must be known and deliberate. So an individual as the moral agent has full knowledge of doing a certain action. So there's a prior knowledge and a deliberate evaluation of whether to fulfill an action or not. So leaving a question gihapon no ang citations, it asks the questions. Do you know exactly what you are doing, or did you do the act intentionally? He or she must have full knowledge and consent of his or own action. Some of the ano nga maingon no nga nganong imo man na siyang gitagaan og kuan bugas. Because I know the fact nga wala sila malungag. Ako na siyang gibuhat because kabaw ko no nga mao junay angayan og insakto nga nako nga buhaton. You have the knowledge already. Mao nang uban no mingon di sa korte nga nganong sa actually sir wa mo ko labot sir nga anang pangawat nila wa ko labot wa ko mo appeal. Pero kuyog mo. Yes, kuyog me. Bisan pag wala ka mo bisan pag wa ka mangawat no para nimo you're not going to sympathize with the kind of activity that they're performing with, but coming from the idea nga nikuyog kanila that you know their actions no nga bati na. So of course ang practicality ana no is ang balaod mulantaw gid siya nga dili gyud ka mapwede nga ma-invalidate sa reklamo. Pwede gyud ka na ma-appeal gyud ka sa reklamo no kay kuyog man mo. So meaning to say you have the full consent nga you allow those people to do such act. Why not imo silang gi-question ngano imo silang gilalis ngano gitugtan man nimo. Okay? We have number 2, human acts must be free. So an individual as the moral agent is free from any external factors as well as internal pressure to do an act. O diyan no? Tanaw na to ha. External factors, meaning to say there is no instrument that would actually triggers the person to perform such act. No, wala no? Even kaning mga balaod or mga silot na wala no? Next, we have this what we call internal pressure to do an act. So, kani internal pressure, like for example, pareha to ganiha, no? Kung gi-mention nga kung uhawon ka, gutumon ka, that becomes also the internal pressure. He or she is neither forced nor intimidated to do or not to do something. Okay? Now, there's an obvious absence of constraint from within and outside of the individual. He or she is free to do the act without the influence of an outside factor and personal pressure from within. He or she does not act so independently and not because of shame, request, or control from someone else, nor from emotional disturbance. Okay? Mingon nga, dili gani ka mubuhat na, bantay lang ka na ko niya. Bantay lang niya ka na ko, itugan kasi mong uyab. No? Lain kay no murag mahimo siyang involuntary no kay because para nimo na focus man ka there is that stimulus that triggers you to perform such act even though you know the fact that it is not coming from your own free will. So human acts are voluntary. The action proceeds from the willingness of an individual to perform an action with a perceived knowledge of the end. So it asks the question, are you willing to do the act? And do you know what you're doing and where your action is leading to? No, he or she wills to perform the act with understanding that he or she knows consciously risk where his or her actions are leading to. Okay, so there you can see the determinants, how it was actually, the two are actually compared together. No, the knowledge, the use of intellect, so asa siya na belong, so human act, presence of free will. So this is how you're going to categorize the particular act if it is actually belong to human act or to the acts of man. So yeah, no, makita no, this clearly shows the differences between human acts and acts of man. As an object of morality, the human action is done with full knowledge of the action, performed with the use of free will, and acted upon voluntarily. So the absence of these three crucial determinants renders the actions as a mere act of man. Okay? So human actions are qualified as good or right, moral or bad, or wrong or immoral, or indifferent or non-moral. The quality and standard of a human act depend on the relationship of the act with norms of morality. Diya ginamulantaw isa sa norms of morality. So both the divine and human positive laws are specific. Diri na atong makita gani no sa akong gisayt no atong diri no gi-highlight niya diya divine and human positive laws are specific application of the eternal law or the natural law. So if a positive law does not adhere to or respect the natural law, then it ruins or damages the development of the human person. So this is how the interplay between mga balaod nga binugna sa tao ug nga balaod nga gimugna sa Dios. Okay? Mo nang mangutana mo sir, diin din nagikan ang balaod sa tao sir. Actually kanang balaod sa tao was gikan mo kuna sa balaod sa atong magbubuhat, no? Ay mo makita niya bawal ang magpatay. So any forms of killing. Naam sa nay balaod ta, di ba? Na lang gid ko lang gid siya himo lang gid siya specific. And of course, there are specific measures from its specific circumstances. Okay? I'm sorry. Murag pas kay na move na ko da. So kay na move. Okay, so what's next? A moment ka sa dali lang pas. Sana ni mag-drag. Okay, saha kadali lang guys. Sorry kay class no. So here we have the freedom and responsibility, no? So according to Jean-Paul Sartre, man is condemned to be free because there is no God. So according to Sartre, sinumpa ang tao na maging malaya. Whether he likes it or not, man is doomed to freedom as he himself is freedom. Ang tao mismo ay kalayaan. So this follows from Sartre's perception that man is the only being whose excuse me, existence precedes his essence. So there's no such thing as God-given essence or nature of man insofar as man alone has to create himself and develop his own essence from his freedom. So sa ato pa, kanina si Jean-Paul Sartre, no? Somewhat like, he do not believe that actually human beings are actually created by God. No? Nakakuha na ko no, kay para niya no, wala may Dios. Sa ato pa, mura rin siya atheist, no? But according to Jean-Paul Sartre, ang tao ko no para mahimo siyang mapuslanon, para mahimo siyang naay kaninong gitawag siya whose essence precedes his existence precedes his essence, meaning to say magdepende no ang ato ang existence, the way how we actually define with our own existence, magdepende sa atong pagpaningkamot, no? Kung giunsa na to paghatag og kapuslanan ng atong pagkatao sa kalibutan. So Sartre is telling us that man is condemned to be free because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he does. So it is up to you to give a meaning, no? Yun na, Sartre believes that existence precedes essence, meaning Sartre believes that existence precedes essence. Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. Yeah, no? Yeah, na tumakuan na, no? That is according to Jean-Paul Sartre. Now, I think everything no is kuha naman no na kuha naman nato no ato arang naugkat no. So according po in addition to that, according to Sartre also kita no pagkay mugso na nitong kalibutan na, of course katumbas na diya no ang ato mga pananagutan. We already have our responsibility. So tanan no ang tanang butang anaan nato no katumbas pud na sa ato ang mga responsibilidad isip usa ka tawo. Since we are created as a rational being, no, the highest form among all creations. Okay, let's proceed with a view of Martin Heidegger, no, 1889-1976. Heidegger contends that this emphasis on freedom enables us to understand philosophy as a going after the whole, no, what is at the same time going to our roots. So in other words, we must search for the essence of human freedom. So in the constant presence of being the world precedes and grounds philosophical thinking. So diyan no, ang atong kaluwasan, you cannot actually or you cannot fully understand anything else, not unless you know the fact that it is already there, no? Ang kaning freedom mura na siya nahimo na to nga atuan na siya nga kaluha, no? Pagkatao na to, so diha, no, diha na na siya diha na nga atuang kagawasan, atuan na siya kaluha. Now diha pinaagi niya na, no, ato ang responsibilidad ang pag-ugkat, no, sa atuang kagikanan, no? Nya with that we can actually understand kung unsa og kinsa ta. Okay? I'm sorry, excuse me class. Okay, this is manifested in Martin Heidegger's idea on the sien. The means there, sien means being. Okay, Heidegger challenges us to understand the meaning of the sien. So what is that? So what it is that Martin Heidegger wanted to share to people, or especially nato, no, ng mga tao. Ningon siya ang the sin kuno means of what it means to be there. So he claimed that man is the sin, being there, but the sin does not necessarily mean man. No, dili lang jud idea, no. This means that being there has to be made. So diha pod ginagawa ang pagiging tao. So it's somewhat like with the view of Paul Sartre, no, gatong lang taon. Pero diri lahi po siya na siya gipang introduce niya kaning the sin, no, the means, and their sin means being. So dili lang enough, no, that could actually identify the sin simply identifies or simply signifies the human person itself, but ang ginagawa ng ang pagiging tao. Tinuod man po, no, if we're going to understand, like for example, pangutan-on ka, kani si Kuan, how did you find this person? Mingon ka, kawatan man sa, o kanay, pwede po, mingon nga, kanay mong ex ba? How did you define your ex? Mingon ka nga, ay maldita ka na siya, stricta ka na siya, no? So mo na nga, ato pong malantaw no nga, kani di nga tuang Kuan, kani di ato ang pagkatao, of course, kita ra po nagbugna na, no? Sa ato ang mga buhat. So we have to create our beings as a person. Our mere existence does not presuppose that we are living as a person already. So like Sartre, we are responsible for projecting our lives. So we must see to it that we are the gardener of our own lives. So, mao no, murag ka nang we are the masters of our own no, ato ang kaugalingon nga story, life story. So we are the author. Okay? So good highlights from this philosopher. So other factors which affects the morality of human acts. So what are the factors canon that would actually affect the morality of the human acts? So my dear children, if you have noticed, observed, or experienced, while norms or laws are general, most often in their implementation, there are many factors to consider, especially in judging the acts committed in relation to the law. So yes, it was actually made in general, but of course, everything has its specific. Example, if two people committed the same crime, how come that their punishments are not the same, even in the school setting? Sometimes a student would complain that how come that my classmate was allowed to enter or do such things while I am not? So mingon mo no nga, nga nang ipatake mo to sa exam niya, ako wala. So dire atong tanaw, no? This is something also that could actually urges every learners, no, to investigate. Aside from the purpose and circumstances that affect the judgment of a certain act, there are other factors to consider. Other authors would call this impediments to human acts. And as I say, impediments, no? Mga impediment means hindrance. Okay? Unsa man nga mga hindrance atong sutaon. So impediments of human acts, though naturally a product of will and reason, are sometimes influenced by certain factors. What are these certain factors, which are called impediments to human actions? So these factors intervene and bar one's actions from being human or contribute to the reduction of the quality of the certain action. So the impediments affect the quality of human acts. So we have this, number one, ignorance. Tinuod man po, no? Kay kaningang no, even though pareha mong duha o gibuhat sa inyong sala, but namte gitawag nila impediments. So moral impediments. So diyan na ato makita na no, Number one, ang ginguda ignorance pertains to lack of pertinent information as to the nature, so circumstances and effect of a certain action. So ignorance takes place when an individual consciously proceeds to an act or a certain matter without due consideration of the relevant or necessary information related to it. So ignorance is classified into napo dahil no kaning impediments, napo siya classifications. Ang ignorance, we have letter A, invincible ignorance. So there is invincible ignorance when one is totally ignorant of the things surrounding his or her action and there is no way to remove or dispel. No, uh, coming from the word itself, invincible, no, dili makita. So in situations like this, the capability of the individual is negated. A good example of this kind is a person who is illiterate and one who does not know how to read and write. So kanino? Appeal po na no, like for example, gipapirma ka sa abogado. Nya pagpapirma sa abogado siya, unsa man siya sir, basta pirmahi lang na diha. Wala mo guna di ka maunsa na. And right after that one, napailan kag kaso. Nibong ni ka ngano man to. So appeal siya sa impediments no, one sa kaning gitawag ignorance, ari ka mo fall sa factor nga invincible ignorance. So naagi din no. Okay, like for example, another example, kaning jaywalking. If you are from nagpuyo sa mountain or kanang province, so of course dili giday ka dito din no nga makabalo ka sa mga balao diri sa syudad, no? So pagtabok nimo sa metro kahit lang kagdakop. So nya ang uban gidakop gyud gidala, ang uban pud wala ra gipalaya ra gipagbian ra. So mo na no nga gitagaan kag chance ana no, pero nami di gipanultihon kas na ignorance of the law excuses no one. So diya po to, ari na po no magdepende po no kaning mga biases magdepende po na siya sa tao no nga sa paglantaw sa matag tao, and we also have to understand that one and put that one to considerations na pwede gina may tabo. Okay, next we have dispensable ignorance, meaning mistakes or wrong actions out of invincible ignorance lessens one's culpability. So an example would be committing a mistake without totally knowing that what you're doing is really wrong. So there are two forms there po. Sa kaning gitawag na to invincible ignorance. One is pretending to be ignorant since he or she just want to gain the approval of the other for his or her wrong action. No, gitawag siya with kanino na siya biases no kay gitawag mo siya with pretending naman, nagpretend naman siya no, she pretended or one is pretending no papangbuang kunuhay no, wa kabaw pero kabaw ko dai siya kaya gitawag siya palusot no. Naturally any action performed under affected napo gitawag affected invincible ignorance. Naturally, any action performed under affected or pretended ignorance does not excuse a person from his or her action. In fact, it actually increases his or her culpability. So an example would be a student who pretends not to know the school's policy on a proper haircut to excuse him or her when confronted by the guards. Ingon din no nga wa kabalo. So sa pagkatinuod, of course, you know already. So napo na ito no, gitawag nito affected invincible ignorance niya. Narabaw ni no mo. May tabo ra man ni usahay sa mga estudyante mingon nga, "Sir, ngano wa man madawat ang ako ang kuan sir?" Ana-ana din no, pero sa pagkatinuod gud, late na gud tinuod ni submit. No, ang uban mingon nga, "Unsa wa man mi kabalo to sir oy, idmudo ana no." Ngailan ra ba gid nimo kay nga no, nabiya na di communication sa GC, nya wa mo tan-aw des GC. Okay? It's very important also class because you might actually be tagged coming from this criteria of this what we call affected invincible ignorance. So fine or crass ignorance, what is this? It happens when a person exerts little effort to know something. Giving the wrong medicine to a sick person may result in the sickness of the person getting worse. No, papakuan na paguryo-guryo, no? Yan isamot na hinuon. Okay? So, atong usbon, no? Giving the wrong person kuno, that is the cited example, medicine to a sick person niya, hinuon, isamot na hinuon ang sakit. Tungod pa kuan man, sa paguryo-guryo man. Matawag din siya supine or crass ignorance. Okay? So, what about kaning concupiscence? Did you know? Ato may balaan is concupiscence, no? A situation where one's inordinate passion hinders one to exercise correct reasoning, thus also affects his or her action. So, passion mean our emotional elements like anger, pride, envy, love, joy, etc. So, not all passions are bad. Some are innately bad, no? But some become bad only when they are excessive or called inordinately. So an example is a pride and anger. These two becomes bad only when they become excessive, that they already control one's mind and even push him or her to do a certain action. Still, on pride, you must be proud of your parents. You need pride, or else you'll be centered with your grades, even if they are all line of 7 or even all 75%. So the morality of actions done out of concupiscence depends on how the passions affected the action of the doer. So the culpability may increase or decrease or can be negated. So asa man ta dapitan ni, so dapat dili ari ta mo po sa gitawag nato og kuano mo sa virtue sa kang Aristotle's view sa virtue. Nga dapat ang tao, you have to be ara sa tunga-tunga. Dili maayo nga makuwang, di pud maayo nga masubraan, which is tinuod, no? Kaning mingon tag passions like ipakita diri kaning pagka kaning anger, kaning pride and envy, no, dili pud maayo nga kaning anger, kaning sobraan na to atong kalagot. Normal naman gid nga malagot ang tao, kung imong pasubraan, of course that could lead a person to become he may cause trouble no, or else maka-cause kag mga distractions pride, of course, gi-emphasize that you must be proud of your parents but too much pride is not good also. So dapat we have to put everything in balance. A spontaneous or sudden inordinate passion influences an action before it has been controlled by the will. So example, Juan was already running late for his class. When he entered the school campus, the guard confiscated his ID for no apparent reason. Out of his anger, he unconsciously cursed the guard. In Ibanag, you call this gaba lang. Like gaba kang nanampal dahil sa gulat, etc. So the culpability of bad actions done out of antecedent concupiscence can be lessened or even negated depending on how it happened. Dire po no kay mura na siya nanimaos no. Like for example, gikumpiska siya nagdagan-dagan pa siya kay na late siya padung sa klase niya, gikalit confiscate sa guard without even telling what is the offense committed. Diha mo naglagot na noon siya no, ara siya mo fall sa kaning tawag nito antecedent concupiscence. Okay? So I think everything becomes understandable no to everybody. I'm sorry, masubraan. Ginoo ko na labil gini siya. Sorry class ha. Okay, let's go back. I'm so sorry. I need to go back from where I stopped. Okay, loading kaya akong laptop. Saan siya nagbuot ng iya ha. Okay, we have consequent. Ay, no. Tapas. Okay, we have this what we call consequent sorry class na concupiscence. Sorry. So that you can view also. Okay, so consequent concupiscence action tawag rin no, the example is babaw no ang balikod. So this happens when one is aware of the inordinate passion and the will chooses to arouse the said passion to perform the bad action. So kana no, you already know no, aware na ka nga bati na siya no, you already know the passion nga, like for example kana nga manguana no, mahinubra na ba. Okay, you know already nga dili maayo, like for example mukaon so dapat balance na no, pero since naman kay kuan imo man pasumbalabihan kaon kag taman dili gingon rin no, the passion has already passed through the intellect and controlled by the will, but still the individual performs the human act. In other words, You know that you are very angry at that person, but you still push through with the bad actors like punching or kicking or slapping him or her. You did not do anything to calm down or to cool your anger. So, Diana, since the passion is deliberately and voluntarily acted upon, the culpability of the action increases. Gluttony is a very good example. Pedro is obese. So, during a town fiesta, he had visited the houses of his poor friends, eating to his satisfaction. So, on his way back home, he decided to drop by a fast food restaurant for more food, and later on, he vomited. No? Di ba? Kita na to, no? You know already, it actually takes process sa imong mind, no, sa imong free will, but still imo gyapon gi-prevail no ang imuha nga gipalabil gyapon nimo imong passion nga kabaw kang obese na ka mukaon gyud maayo. So that's part of it, no, sa consequent concupiscence. Now let's proceed with fear. So affects the performance of a human act since the individual is threatened by the impending dangers. Ginagawa or nagawa mo yung isang bagay kasi tinakot ka. So diha no, tataw ginano to makita diha no. Now those are also the factors. So let us not forget with the number one, which is the ignorance, no. Yeah, are fear. So next, I think I need not to read more about this one, okay? Sa labtuno naman kayo, no? So are ta dire sa I'm sorry. Nasa labihan na sad. Sa man ni ako ang kuan oy laptop. So let's proceed. Sorry class ha. Inconvenience. Oh my God. So 4, no? So 4 is violence. So I will not discuss this in detail since it is very much related to the case of fear. Pero ningon rin no, violence, the direct message of this is you must exert all the efforts needed to defend yourself in extreme cases where your life or your dignity is at stake. So again, this is the cases of rape or holdouts wherein the holdupers even want to kill their victims. So the morality here is that one is culpable if he or she will not exert all the necessary efforts to defend himself from the aggressor. So if needed, if his life or dignity is at stake, although the culpability can be lessened depending on the circumstances. To the report, in the other angle, if a woman is defending herself from a rapist and accidentally the head of the rapist hits a wall or stone or hard object and died, in this case, the woman's action is not culpable since she was just defending herself and there was no intention to kill the aggressor. So, very kuan kay siya, no? Very certain di kay siya, no nga? Like for example, if you are fighting for someone that could also that could cause the person's life, no, to become threatened or your dignity will be put at stake. Of course, that's normal and that is acceptable since it's very normal for a person to fight for himself, no, para nga di siya madisgrasya. Okay, so let's proceed with then I'm sorry ha. Okay, so idiot plus na ni. So now sa conditions now about self-defense, we talk about violence. So the aggression must be unjust, the aggression must be actual, use minimum violence, it must be proportional. So kung yun sa ka mo na po na no, di po pwede nga imuha pong palabanan. So problems come when people just kill someone without being attacked physically, no? Gikalitan ra ka, gistoryahan na gani kag sakit, ang imong gibawas, imong gipatay ang tao. So meaning to say, of course, it's no longer acceptable. Diba? Remember, in self-defense, there's no intention to kill, but only to defend oneself or run away from the trouble. For example, you have a gun and one is running after you with a knife. Which part of the aggressor's body should you hit with your gun? The head, stomach, neck, chest? None of the above, my dear children. It should be the foot or feet. Dili gid mo tirahan ng ulo no, tiyan or ano, mas maayo pa diri sa feet. Para nga, gitawag no, is a firm, stable behavior pattern of acting. An individual naturally and consciously performs an action as a result of its repeated performance. So diyan na to ma-understand class no ang ilang category. Next, of course, you have this what we call the virtue habit. Dire no? So good moral habits are called virtues, while bad habits are vices. So people are expected to exert utmost effort to free themselves from vicious habits. Some examples of your bad habits: children are speaking bad words when you are mad. So di ano mo, di kaya no nga mamalikas ta. So how do we moralize vices or bad habits? So vices or bad habits are culpable. No? The culpability is lessened only when one is exerting effort to correct or stop his or her vices. Sama po ni panigarilyo class, no? Like for example, kanang pagpanigarilyo is a wrong kanino it's a bad habit. Nabilong siya sa wrong act. Pero how can you actually correct that one or to lessen this the responsibility nga naa nato, no, or kaning gitawag natong accountability sa tuang mga consequence atong action. So of course that can only be lessened if you in yourself you would actually exert effort nga mingon ka nga ako ning hinayan ko ning biya. Sama ra po na sa relationship, no nga like for example you know the fact nga kana nga sige na ka no sige na ka mao ginay mong batasan basagad magbuwag mo sa imong mga past nga mga girlfriend, it's because playboy ka nya. How can you actually correct that wrong habit that you have? So of course if you in yourself you wanted to change the kind of person with who you are, then you must be willing to submit yourself to this what we call in the process of kanino imong i-lessen ang kana siya na imong i-lessen as much as possible imong hinahinayan ba nga wad-on sa imong kagalingan until such time nga mawala na gid siya sa imuha. And that's the time that we can say that that becomes effective. Okay? The kind of act that you have is well acceptable already. Okay? So I think I've been discussing so far, no? And I think everything that I mentioned here are actually very understandable to everybody. So akong Usbon, daghang salamat and have a great day everyone. God bless you. Salamat. Thank you. Goodbye.